They didn't have, but they said, sure, we'll stay. They weren't worried about anything because we had great communications and they could escape in the jungle from anywhere and get away. I knew that. So I took off in the hill cover, went back to Vientiane, and then I think the team went on into the village and they met General Vang Pao. They talked most of the night. And they sent me a message in the morning, and the guy said, Bill, come on back. This is the man we've been looking for. So I went back. I met Vang Pao and asked him, what are you going to do now? The communists are so strong in North Laos. He said, we must fight the communists. I know the communists well. We cannot live with the communists. If we don't fight, then we'll just run away to Thailand. I said, well, but he said, if you can give us the weapons, we will fight. So I said, well, no, I'll do the best I can to get the weapons, but I don't promise you anything because I don't know what I can do. So I went back to Vientiane, and it just happened that one of the very top officers in the CIA had come in that day. And when I got back to Vientiane, they told me to go to dinner at the chief of station's house, that this visitor was there. And I just told them the story of what happened during the day. And then they said, well, tomorrow morning you come into the embassy. So I went in and talked to him then. And he said, yeah, what you said was a good idea. We will put out the first 1,000 weapons to arm the people to see how they do. So then I went back up and talked to Vang Pao and said, where can we have a training place? And where we could have the most time to train the Hmong there. Oh, he said, I know the perfect place. So I said, how much time will we have from the time we drop the weapons until the enemy will come up? Oh, he said about 3 days. Well, you know, I know that any other military guy would have said, you can't train anybody in 3 days. I didn't say that. I told my Thai team, I said, okay, let's sit down and make a 3-day training schedule. So we started training 300 men, 3 companies. And of course, the Hmong, they already knew how to walk in the mountains. They knew it. The only thing you had to do is how to teach the weapons. And to teach, we just only taught them the ambush. You know, you hide in a place when the enemy comes, you shoot them and they all fall down. And that's what we have to do. So we trained that, and it just, right, about the 3 days, a big enemy group came up the trail walking right to where we were. So the 3 companies went out. I was back behind them. They ambushed and killed almost everybody that was coming up, and the rest all ran way back down the hill. And you know, I'll never forget that. They were so happy that the Hmong, because it had been so successful, nobody had gotten hurt. It was a perfect thing for the first operation. And so, that started, it was a great success. So they let us then continue to arm very soon. I think we had armed, by the end of the first 2 months, we had already armed 8,000 Hmong. And we went on to, I expect, in the end, we probably armed 20,000. So all of a sudden, overnight, the communists thought they had North Laos. But all of a sudden, they had Hmong with weapons on top of every hill. So they didn't have North Laos. And we still had it. And the Hmong were terrific guerrilla fighters. And they were already, you didn't have to teach them much. I mean, it was natural because they could walk. The Hmong could walk in those mountains where you would swear that they must have an airplane because they could move so far and so fast in those mountains. And then we started arming all of these other areas, and within a very short time, I think by the end of the first 6 months, we had already armed 8,000 men. And we went on until we had armed Hmong on the top of every mountain. So North Laos did not belong to the communists anymore. They belonged to us. And the Hmong fought so well, but at that point, there was no question that they were fighting for their own country, and they intended to stay there. Right? Then things kept going. We ended up, I think the total, we had armed around 30,000 Hmong. And they fought extremely well. Everything went as we had hoped. But as then what happened in the United States, you've got to remember that if you go into something like we were doing there, and it happens in other areas the same way, and you come up to an election in the U.S., then it don't matter which party is in power when you do it. The other party trying to get back in power will immediately start attacking what you're doing. So so if you're going to do something in the U.S. like this, you must make sure that you finish before the next big presidential election, because that's going to become the political football. That's still the same. You can see it, right? What we're doing in Asia right now is the same. They use it in every election because they want to get back in power, so they're going to use whatever thing they can find that the people might listen to, and that's just a big problem. So then we kept, we eventually, I think at the top we had armed 30,000 Hmong, and they fought extremely well, and we were very close to them. I remember a lot of amusing things after we got started, and we were planning to have a big operation, right? So Vang Pao wanted me and a couple of other Americans who worked with me to meet him in this one village, and we were going to have a big planning exercise. So they took this house, one of the Hmong houses they call the Long House, and the people let us all stay there. I think if you put it all together that we were planning, we probably had 20 people there, and we all slept that night in that Long House. And I slept next to Nang Chu. He was the old big fighter, but but there was another American who worked for me who slept beside him on the other side, right? So during the night, but the other fellow, the other American, he was a real hairy guy. He had hair all over his chest and on his back. And so during the night, the Nang Chu was dreaming that he was home with his wife. So he reached out into his hand on this guy, and he felt all the hair, and he jumped up and said, "It's a bear, it's a bear." And they were deathly afraid of bears, because those big bears could kill you with one swipe of their claw. There are a lot of amusing things that happened along with us, and that's one I remember extremely well. And then, then when we started planning operations, the Hmong were going to go out and do this and do that, and we would all meet usually at Vang Pao's house the day before, and they'd cook up a meal, and they always boiled chickens boiled, and then one of the, I don't know what they call them, shaman or whatever, would come up and study that chicken. And if the feet curl a certain way, he'd say, "Don't go on the operation, they'll all be killed." So, but BP figured out a way to get around that by, I don't know exactly how I did it. So the feet didn't defeat us before we got started. And so they continued to fight everywhere, and it was because we were winning. It was a very enjoyable thing. And of course, I came to be a great admirer of Hmong people because they were very brave.